Hi, welcome to the video. So today I'm going to cover focused listening in your practice, and we're going to break this into two different stages. The first one will be hearing and pinpointing your mistakes so that you can correct them. This is something everyone needs to do, but advanced players will probably already automatically be doing this. Beginners and intermediate players a lot of times we get so focused on looking at the tab or the sheet music and trying to get their fingers to right fret, they won't hear any of the mistakes they're making, or a lot of them. Which I'd say go slower, play small chunks of music so that you don't have to be looking at a whole page of music at once. Play just, if need be, one measure and play that cleanly, and then move on to the next one. The second stage will be creative choices that when you're composing or interpreting some music, that you don't just always automatically do the same thing. You listen to different options, and then we'll give you some options in that too. And also, if you are duplicating someone else's music, you pay attention to those details and then you duplicate those, because a lot of players can look at a tab and they can play note for note everything on there, but it doesn't sound like the original. And the reason is a lot of the details on how you play the notes aren't actually in the tab. The basic notes and rhythm is there, but the other details are a lot of times not there. Okay, so let's go and jump into this. So first thing, just make sure all the notes are ringing cleanly, not be muffled, not buzzing. You make sure you get good fret placement so you don't have a buzz. It's a nice clean note. If you're doing a chord, make sure you're not muffling the string. If you're not used to hearing the chord, you might not even notice that the difference between that. So make sure when you first learn chords especially, or if something doesn't sound right, check it. That way, they can sound good there, but if I there you can say, okay, well, this I can then pinpoint which finger is muffling or not holding tight enough. Okay, another thing to be careful of is letting open notes ring out when you don't want them to. This can oftentimes will happen because when you're switching from one string to another, you pick up your finger and kind of create almost a little pull off on it. Now that happens to everyone, and that's why some people put the string dampeners on. But what you can do to try and minimize that is you can muffle with your right hand and you can muffle with your left hand. Usually I muffle the notes below while I'm playing with my left hand and the ones above with my right hand. So even if you're floating above, if you hear and not touching the strings and muffling them, just don't let them keep ringing. Sometimes I'll see students and they'll play a scale and they'll create some noise off that sixth string, and that will still be ringing out when they're all the way down here on the first string, because they never paid enough attention because they're too focused on the notes to actually just stop that note from ringing out. So listen to what you're playing. Another thing that happens a lot is string changes gives people trouble. And a lot of times what happens is beginners might pick up their whole hand to preset it for the next string. But what that does is then you have a pause while they're trying to get those fingers in place. You need to just put down the next note. And you need to make sure this one doesn't stop ringing before this one. So you keep it ringing, then when you place the next note, that's when it picks up. So you get continuous notes. Same thing on the story. And that can even happen on the same string. Sometimes players will not keep this finger down and they'll create a pause. Just keep the fingers in place until you need to pick them up. Okay. Another thing that can happen is like on string changes, and this is another common thing, people might accent the first note on the string, each string, or accent some of the first note in the phrase. Sometimes you want that, but most of the time you're not going to want to be accenting all those notes. So try and keep your playing nice and even. If you are accenting something, you can where you want to, but don't just do it unintentionally. And another time that can be good for using accents is if you're in trouble staying in time with the metronome, you might accent the first note of each rhythmic grouping. So the first note of the group of 16th notes or a triplet. But then when you put that back into your improvising a song, you probably want to leave that out. Unless the song actually is doing a similar thing, accenting those. So be careful on accenting those unintentionally or just from habit. Another thing that happens, people will hesitate a lot of times before this difficult passage. It might be a difficult chord change. And I'm not talking about if you just really don't have something down and need to sit there and, okay, get each finger down, then of course there's going to be hesitation. But what I would say is take that out of the context of the song and just drill that chord or change or that whatever it is, scale or arpeggio lick, over and over, and then put it back in the song. If you have to, every time you run through the song, pause at certain sections because you can't do it fluidly, then take that out and just practice those sections. So listen, but listen for those slight hesitations, because you might think I have it down, but you're still slightly hesitating before a difficult part or before changing techniques. Maybe you're sweeping and then you have a slight hesitation before you do a scale run. Make sure that whatever you're doing, the one blends right into the next one fluidly. Of course, unless you don't want it to blend. It's not that there's a right or wrong, but don't have unintentional hesitancies or pauses. Another thing to be aware of is when you're doing certain techniques. If you're palm muting, for example, a lot of beginners will hold it down so heavy that they end up muffling the note. You still want to hear the note, and you can do different degrees of palm mute. But if it's the same palm mute, not muffled, you want to still hear some aspect of the note. And you don't want it so light that with a lot of distortion and stuff, it's just ringing out too much. That's a lot of times what the palm use for is to make it crisper with distortion, like open notes. Or doing slides, hammer, and pull-offs. Make sure that the first note that you're picking isn't louder than the notes that come after it. Or make sure that you're not doing hammer-ons louder than your pull-off, or pull-offs louder than your hammer-ons. Or a slide louder than the rest of it. So try and keep your technique flowing more evenly and kind of listen for that, because otherwise you'll probably never notice it if you're doing some of that stuff, if you're not really paying attention. Okay, let's jump into the second area, the creative choices or articulation details. So again, a lot of this stuff won't be actually written in tab or in sheet music if you're reading someone else's music. You need to kind of interpret it if you don't have a recording of them, or listen to that person and see what they're doing. This is also important though if you're composing your own stuff. So one thing is changes in speeds and dynamics. So slight variations where maybe it's notated just as a straight scale run, but it's actually being played with slight variations in volume or speed within it. Or you might have a rhythm that is repeating slightly different. So make sure that you're playing, the correct rhythms on it. And also, like I was saying though, do variety. You don't want something to be always the same. Listen for, in your own playing and in other people's, what's being emphasized. So the emphasis of notes gives them more importance. This could be through having been the first note in a phrase or the last note. The notes in between matter less than those are the notes you hear more, the first and last note. Same thing on a chord. If you do a different fingering on it, this is still a C major chord. If I leave off that C, it could be thought of as A minor 7 too, but in this case I'm thinking of it as a C, because the C is still here. That would just be an inversion, but it's going to sound different than if I put the C there. Same notes, but the order of them are changing. So the note you hear first on a chord or on a run makes a difference. You also might emphasize a note by repeating it or coming back to it, accenting it, pausing on it, any of those things. So listen to that in your own playing and in other people's playing. Maybe you want to emphasize a note more for a specific melody or harmony. If you're playing with a backing track or other people, of course, listen to what harmony it's creating. Pay attention to the fact that you can do things in different ways. So, like on vibrato, some people just always do it the same, but you can do a smaller, you can do it bigger, you can do side to side, you can do slower, faster, different things. And a lot of these like that, I'll put a link in that corner. I did videos specifically to talk about vibratos, for example, but a lot of the stuff I've got videos on, where I talk about, I did one on dynamics also. but also other things such as different types of slides, different types of bends, pre-bends versus regular bends, how much you're bending the note. When you're sliding, are you picking both notes, or doing a legato slide and only picking the first note? So don't do things out of rote habit. Listen to what you're playing, especially if you're composing something, and think about what sounds best for this piece at that moment. And there's not a right answer. It's just listen to your ears and trust what you like. Listen to your phrasing. So this, especially things like contrasts. So contrasts are important in music. So different length phrases, different complexities phrases, some simple, some complex, tension and resolution, creating something out of key and then resolving it back in. Listen for that stuff, and you can then choose to maybe add it in if you feel like, I've played 100% in key, and that's okay. But maybe you want a little bit more tension in it, so maybe you add some notes out of key, or you change keys to create a little bit more variety on that. Or maybe find, I'm playing the same volume, especially intermediate players. I find a lot of times when you sound kind of uninteresting or monotone, it's because they're playing phrases that are the same length, same volume, same speed, and they're doing that throughout the whole solo. You need contrast and variety. Play something that's a short phrase, and then maybe you're playing a longer phrase. Something that varies in simplicity, complexity, all those different things. Think about your picking and how it affects your sound. Picking harder or softer affects your tone. Where you pick can significantly influence the tone you're playing. Doing all downstrokes gives a more even sound and a lot of times heavier sound than if you're doing down up. But down up allows you to go faster because you're hitting on both the up and the downstroke and not just on the downstroke. Though there are people who can play very fast with just downstrokes, but you're never going to be playing something really fast with just downstrokes. Think about how different things sound. Like, are you finger picking or plucking the notes with your fingers, or playing the same one with strumming, and how that affects the sound of it and the feel of it? Think about whether you're alternate picking a arpeggio or sweeping it. All that stuff changes the sound of it. Another thing to think about is how you're fingering a part. For example, if I have this C note, these other C ones are the exact same note, same octave. But as you can hear, they sound different. It's because I'm playing on different strings, which give them a different tone. If I'm playing like a simple arpeggio, like an A minor, choosing where or what fingering I'm playing I'll keep it in the same octave, will affect the sound of it. It also affects the technique of, am I doing it picked with alternate or comedy, or am I doing sweep picking? And things like that can lead to different feels too. Think about how you're going to pick something, and we are talking picking, how you're going to finger an idea so that you can then get the tone you want, the placement you want, this more efficient for the next part you're going to, the techniques you want. Of course, so this is all talking about listening to your own playing. Of course, you can listen to other people's playing, and none of these require a lot of ear training or music theory. If you have that, then you can listen for some of those aspects too. You can be listening for what interval is being played, or you can. There's a lot of other things you can be listening to on it. When you are listening to other people's music, you'll listen to some just general things, even if you don't, again, be able to figure out by ear. Listen for things like what's being emphasized, the transitions between parts, themes and variations, what emotional feel it gives you, what contrasts are they using, what harmony are they using with the chords on it, if there are chords in the background. Are they doing key changes or notes outside a key? And just in general, pay attention. There's a big difference between casually listening to something and really more focused or actively listening to it. So it's okay to play casually too. You don't have to always be focused. Sometimes you want to just unwind and relax, and that's the time to play something that you already have down, that you don't have to focus as much because you're not going to make as many mistakes because you already know it, or something that you know 80-90%, maybe some exercise or something, but you want more consistency. So then you can just kind of roll to do it without thinking about it, and you can, like I am now, talk to other people. You can watch TV and do other things, and still get some practice time in. Because focused practice and focused listening in general can be a little bit more tiring mentally than more casual. Anyways, hope you liked the video. Please click like, subscribe, that stuff, so I can build my audience, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.